トビデオ
What a vacation. Hi everyone, your favorite possum is back from a month of rest and relaxation. Had a pretty good time off. Caught some rays, caught up on watching Legends of the Galactic Heroes, caught up on writing a script for a project I'm sure most of you are dying to see one day. But enough about all that. I'm sure giving you all the gory details would just bore you to tears. That's right, it's time for us to get back to work. The risk of burnout has been snuffed out, and I am recharged and raring to go. Let's talk more retro anime, baby. But I can't go into anything big right away. I have to warm up first. Shave the month's worth of rust off the video essayist joints. What to pick? You know, I haven't done my annual Slayers video yet. Nothing quite like tradition to resettle yourself back into the groove. For those few newcomers out there, Slayers is a fantasy franchise centered around the quests and adventures of Sorceress Supreme Lena Inverse. We've already talked about the 3 television series worth of mainline quests, and we've already talked about the 3 out of 4 cinematic prequel adventures she goes on with her friendly partner / hated rival, Naga the Serpent. So I guess we have no choice now except to wrap this saga up. We begin, like always, with Lena and Naga taking a break in a quiet medieval hamlet, enjoying some very modern food. On today's menu is gyros. Suddenly, the bell tower rings and the once active city streets turn empty as the people dutifully hide themselves in their houses. Something is coming, and that something is a rampaging dragon. And riding aside that dragon is a loony lass named Marlene.
Fine, have it your way. Remember, I gave fair warning. Sunflare!
After Marlene says their share of ineffectual threats, Lena and Naga predictably repel her attack. This is what leads to Lena being hired by the town's ruler, Lord Culvert, to stop Marlene, who also happens to be his alienated teenage daughter.
The fortress you see before you is home to a legion of bloodthirsty dragons. The one who leads them is my daughter.
Oh, that's just great!
Meanwhile, across town, Naga, being the always faithful frenemy, has decided to enlist herself in Marlene's cause, partially because she thinks it will net her a bigger payday, but also because she feels that Marlene's evil laugh could use a noblewoman's touch.
You're calling me unsophisticated? Yes, I am! Listen to yourself. Your laugh is too tense and forced.
After 4 years, we finally come to the end of the Lena Naga movies with its final entry, 1998's Slayers Gorgeous. And out of all of them, this might be the one I've heard about the least. Perfect and Returns always appeared on must-watch lists when I was first getting into the medium, and Great was something I eventually absorbed via osmosis through its weirdness alone. But Gorgeous appears to be the most forgotten of the quadrilogy, and the theory I have for why that isn't so gorgeous. Gorgeous is coming out right at the beginning of the end for Slayer's heyday. After a non-stop blitz of adapting the light novel series through TV, film, and manga from 1995 onward, things are beginning to slow down. After Gorgeous, we only have one more 3-episode OVA and a short film before the franchise goes dormant. This was also not helped by the catastrophic failure in adapting another Hajime Kanzaka series, but that is a whole nother episode. For those reasons, Gorgeous feels like the album the band releases after their prime is in the process of fading away. Sure, it may still have some success on the radio, but you can feel that this is the downhill journey from the peak. But does that affect the quality of Gorgeous itself? Well, let's see. Is there an inner beauty to the Slayer's entry, or is it just pretty ugly all around? As with the last episode I did on this subject in May of last year, there is really not much to say on the production side of things. They really did pump these films out like clockwork over the course of 4 years while still having time to spare to work on TV series and OVAs. A lot of the production staff remains the same. Original author Hajime Kanzaka wrote the concept in the screenplay. Hiroshi Watanabe once again returns as director for the movie like he always has, but there are some differences. For one, this is the first Slayers film Watanabe is directing without Kunihiko Yuyama as co-director. And Takahiro Yoshimatsu, who had been doing the character designs for all the previous films, has been replaced by Masahiro Aizawa. And while you might not notice it at first, you can tell there are differences between the two designs. Yoshimatsu's designs of Lina and Naga place a special emphasis on their fantasy protagonist status. There is an overall wispiness to their character models and more volume to their hair. It's as if to show they are magical beings, one step above the rest of the non-magical realm of average humanity. Aizawa, meanwhile, gives them a bit more realistic proportions. Well, with Lina, Naga, and the original character Marlene, he seems to want them to be more grounded, more human-looking. And even if they still have those pinched supermodel waists, you can kinda see they look more down to earth. At the same time, Aizawa also appears to have drawn them to look cuter. You can definitely see it in the eyes where he has made their irises slightly bigger. But if you think that character design change is going to result in more grounded comedy, I wouldn't worry your gorgeous little head about that.
What? Wait a minute!
Slayers Gorgeous was launched into theaters on August 1st, 1998 as part of a double feature. And if you thought Slayers Return and X was a dissonant pairing, just you wait. The film Gorgeous got paired up with was Martian successor Nadesico, the motion picture Prince of Darkness. A film so gloomy and alienating compared to its source material that it's often credited for killing the franchise before it even got started. Prince of Darkness also being a commercial bomb did no favors to Gorgeous. If I had to pick a reason why the Slayers franchise would go dormant in a few years, aside from that other anime, it would be the box office performance of this film. Remember, 1998 is a rough year for the industry as a whole. The old world is dying and a new one is struggling to be born. Did Slayers Gorgeous deserve such a fate? To be chained to the rock of failed ideas and changing industry trends and be sent fathoms below? Being that this is a Slayers motion picture from the 90s, of course the animation looks really good. In fact, it might rival Returns as the best animated of the quadrilogy. The environments might not look as rich as they did in the previous films, hope you like a lot of rocky outcroppings, but it's the action that takes place in those environments that's the true juice of Gorgeous. Masahiro Aizawa was also the animation director for this anime. What noteworthy shots of his I could find in his career suggest that his talent lies a lot more in understated character animation, which is the complete opposite of what Gorgeous gives us. I think they were aware that this could be one of the last Slayers projects they'll get to do, and for that reason, Aizawa and his team do a lot of crazy stuff with their pencils and cells. There are so many shots in this where the animators did not need to work this hard to give us this good a show. But for whatever reason, that's exactly what they did. Why exactly is this character animation of tossing a coin in the air animated so cinematically smooth? Just cause. A big standout is this scene of Lina chasing/fighting Naga drawn by Toshiaki Hontani. It starts off with a 15-second long cut of the two silly sorceresses jumping over rocks trying to chase each other down. Going by 24 frames a second, that is 360 drawings of a single long take of what amounts to two characters running at the camera. After that, we finally see Lina and Naga launch spells at each other to showcase not just their powers as sorceresses, but the animation's big strength throughout this film, the effects animation. The animators put everything into the explosives and spell effects. They were done just as well in the previous entries, but Gorgeous put so much power behind Lina and Naga's routine spellcasting that it underlines why these two clowns have such reputations as destructive saviors. They're heroines who throw heavy artillery at each other whenever they get into a tiff. It all leads up to what I think is the highlight of the movie, which is, of course, Lina casting the Dragon Slave on an actual dragon. And it might be the best the Dragon Slave has looked in the animated medium, rippling with the almighty power of ancient dark magic, finishing with a gargantuan explosion that tears the world around it asunder, while conveniently leaving the squishy humans in the area unharmed. This is another cut we can credit to Hontani. The animation and its presentation makes this anime worth watching on its own because it's also, if you pardon the obvious adjective, gorgeous.
To all those fools who stand in our way, merge your strength and mine. Deliver doom to all of them equally. Dragon Slave!
Voice acting is more or less the same on both the original and the dub. The only bit of weirdness is dub actress for Marlene, Laura Scott. She had a very short career in anime dubbing, with this being her only role of any note. I'd say she does an alright job, except for the strange voice direction decision to give her a Scottish accent.
Well, it does take talent to find such minute flaws. You know, how would you like to aid me in my efforts? I'm willing to offer you a place as one of my Tetrad Knights.
Her accent is not that good either. It will swerve wild so that she'll sometimes shift into somewhere between a pirate and Swedish chef.
My victory over you, I shall prove my justice for all of heaven to see! Dragons, attack!
My only speculation for the accent is that ADV wanted to add to the comedy of the whole thing. I guess, but if that is true, it really is a hat on the hat. ADV loved to do that time and time again. Slayer's Gorgeous, though, really did not need that help.
The one renowned as the Dragon Master and humanity's greatest plague!
Wait a minute!
One observation I've gathered from watching all 4 of these movies since 2021 is that each of them have their own different approaches to how they execute their comedy. Slayer's Perfect does the typical Slayer's approach by balancing out the comedy with serious high fantasy adventure. Slayer's Returns appears to take the high fantasy adventure route before pulling the rug out from under you and spitting gags at you nonstop until it hits credits. Slayer's Great does not even pretend to have the high fantasy element and is just non-stop comedy involving a duel between golems. So how does Gorgeous approach its comedy? After shepherding the franchise for the better part of the decade, I have the feeling Hajime Kanzaka was really racking his brain over how he could make the comedy in Slayers still feel fresh at this point. By now, people have caught on to how the comedy of Slayers works. It's a little tricky to write jokes that land when the people who are familiar with the series have a good idea of where the punchline is going to go.
It was intended as a place of tranquility, but before I knew it, she had remodeled the whole thing.
Before you knew it? How could you not notice major construction on your own villa?
I guess I was distracted.
I see.
That would give a reason behind the comedy of Gorgeous, because what it did is take the subversive comedy of Returns and adds an additional layer to it. Set up a joke, launch the punchline, and add an extra twist to said punchline to throw the audience for a loop. A 1-2-3 punch of a punchline. At first, it lulls you into a false sense of security by introducing the comedic tone early. After a seemingly serious lore dump, we get the reason why Marlene is going to war with her father, and its typical teenage girl malarkey.
Why are you picking a fight with this lord?
Why else? Because dear father is refusing to raise my allowance!
Wait a second!
But once the actual conflict starts, we get the kinds of layered humor that I'm talking about here. For example, Lord Culvert makes a big to-do about how his family has passed down the ability to communicate with dragons for eons. And in an attempt to end the conflict before it even begins, he shows off this power in a big, dramatic display. Guess how it goes in the end. So you think this happens because Lord Culver's dragon communications are a bunch of baloney, right? Nope.
It was just that I somehow failed to convince him.
What's the point then?
Another example is Lena's battle against Marlene's warlord and former captain of the guard, Thornfort. Despite his extravagant looks, Thornfort is built up as a master swordsman and challenges Lena to a duel. And predictably, she Indiana Jones the fool. But Thornfort is not defeated. He gets up, boasts about his power once again, hoists his sword upward, and surrenders with quiet dignity and grace. And for good measure, his former subordinates come in off camera and give him a beatdown. Kanzaka know that he can't keep resorting to reaching into that old bag of tricks time and time again. People will catch wise to it somehow, and he's got to reinvent the gags to show that the franchise still has treads. He mostly succeeds in this endeavor, but even the simpler jokes still get some hits, and thanks to Kanzaka swinging for the fences. At the start of the war, Lord Culvert mentions to Lena that they are at a huge disadvantage because Marlene's ability to communicate with dragons is freakishly good, it being the reason why she's able to command an entire army of them. But that ends up being all for naught, since all the dragons have to hear is the name Lena Inverse, and they become too frightened to fight. Lena and her dragon slave's reputation has traveled far, it would seem.
My name is Lena. Lena Inverse. Lena Inverse. Lena Inverse. Lena Inverse. Lena Inverse. Lena Inverse. Lena Inverse.
Later on in the film, when Lena gets a one-on-one with Marlene, it turns out that Marlene, despite sounding like Scrooge McDuck, is not smarter than the smarties nor tougher than the toughies. Her dragons and her ability to bluff are the only usable tools in her arsenal. All that fancy armor and her chaos sword that she wields with deceptive ease, nothing but cardboard and wood. Our main antagonist is just a theater kid. But as clever and humorous as most of these jokes are, in the pursuit of giving them more zesty twists, it can also lead to them feeling drawn out, almost as if Kanzaka is trying to eat up as much of the runtime to get past the 60-minute mark. So you end up with sluggish gags like the two armies marching to battle, only to realize that both sides have completely missed each other and have arrived at the respective castles with zero opposition, or a minute-long bit of watching Naga's unconscious body float down the river. Or this.
What? Naga! What? Naga! What? Naga! What? Naga?
Are you finished?
Oh, yes. Sorry.
When the gags flounder, it only draws attention to how much the story is barely there. That complaint could apply to every movie plot after Perfect, but it feels especially egregious here. Once the film runs out of jokes it can wring out of the situation it is set up, it basically decides, okay, fun time is over, let's begin the actual conflict, with 20 minutes left in the movie no less. The actual big bad, Marlene's other warlord and Lord Culver's former vizier, Geisno, reveals himself to be the true puppet master behind the conflict, boasting that he was the mastermind behind the dragon army plan, and with all the dragons assembled on the battlefield, he can now show his true form, turning from medieval Frank Reynolds into a gigantic dark dragon, now free to lead his dragon army to conquer the world and exterminate all humans. And if this sounds utterly cliche, that's because it is. Pro tip for writing, pointing out that something is a cliche will only draw attention to its existence as a cliche.
Let me guess. After creating a dragon unit, you disguised yourself as a human, waiting for the day to execute an armed insurrection so the dragons would rule the world. Can't you do better? After all, world domination is so predictable!
And the rest of the anime is the final spectacularly animated battle, ending with that aforementioned dragon slave. Geisno is defeated and transformed into his actual true form of a green Tsuchinoko, Marlene makes up with her father, and Lena and Naga chase each other off into the sunset, quarreling over their reward of a single gold coin. Yeah, you might be a little disappointed that the prequel movie saga ends on an "the adventure continues" note rather than setting up the first anime series like you would expect. But I don't think that plan was ever in the cards for these films. They were just episodic comedy movies about an angry sorceress and her fellow sorceress frenemy with large melons. Compared to what came before, Slayers Gorgeous strikes me as the weakest entry of the saga. The franchise has gone long and the cracks in the foundation are beginning to show as it continues, exposing a lot of weaknesses that didn't seem to be there before. At the same time, there was a noble effort in keeping the franchise's head above water as it started to sink, not content to rest on its laurels, but to actually make the old tricks seem new. A feat that is mostly pulled off in the end. And when you combine it with some of the best animation we've seen from the series so far, I think we have ourselves a worthy final entry in this chapter of the Slayers franchise. It didn't end up becoming that, but it came close.
Right!
Gorgeous, despite some failures outside of its control, did not bring the Slayers anime franchise to its end. Remember, we can credit that to that other Kanzaka anime that came out that same year. But once again, that is a story for another time. Thank you all for watching. If you like this video or want to support this channel, please donate to my Patreon. Each dollar can give you early access to my videos as they come out, as well as keep the channel running a bit more smoothly. You can also subscribe to the channel, ring that bell for notifications, or just like this video. Either way, you'll be helping me out. That's all for now. See you for the next round of tapes.
Just look at their blank expressions. After all, against Miss Lena, the dragon breath has no effect, and furthermore, she eats dragon spawns while they're still alive.
I do not! What am I, a monster?